So PSR, profit and sustainability rules, is something that we've heard a lot about over the past year or so, and it's something we're going to continue to hear a lot about over the next months, the next years. It's not going anywhere. It's been in place for a long time now. It's been in place since about 2010, when it was brought in to stop clubs having a repeated situation like we saw with Portsmouth going to administration in the Premier League. Now, since then it has succeeded in doing that. No club has gone into administration since then in the Premier League, but there have been some unintended consequences when it has come to that. Well, and one of them is that we've actually seen some points deductions for PSR breaches. Everton got punished twice and Nottingham Forest got punished once last season in terms of points deductions, something that I don't think they ever thought was going to happen, but it turns out the PSR people are actually serious. They mean business. So that really made clubs take note, just like, oh, well, we better not mess around, we better not push the barriers with this at the end of the day. So what they've done is they've come up with some interesting ways to get around this. And one of them, the first one I'm going to talk about is not first of all, let me just say, none of these things are illegal. These clubs are not breaking any rules by doing this. But it's a bit dodgy to say the least. And I think anybody if you've got any kind of knowledge about football would know that a lot of this stuff is just a bit ridiculous. But at the end of the day, they're going to do it. Wherever this is legal, they're going to do it. So the first one is, of course, amortization. Now, this is something that people have probably heard a lot about, especially when it comes to a certain Chelsea football club who have done this a lot in recent seasons. So amortization is basically where when you buy a player for a transfer fee, that fee is split up into however many years the contract runs for that player. So for example, if you buy a player for £50 million and you give them a 5-year contract, on your actual financial records when it comes to PSR, that is split up into 5 £10 million instalments over the next 5 seasons. However, on the flip side, if you sell a player for £50 million, then that is counted as a £50 million profit immediately for your club. So if you sell a player for 50 million and buy another player for 50 million with a 5-year deal, you've effectively made a £40 million profit in your first year. And that's something that we've seen with Chelsea in particular, being desperate to sell Conor Gallagher because he's a youth product. He has no cost to the club, apart from his wages, of course, but there's no cost to the club in terms of his transfer fee because he didn't have one. So they're looking to sell him to get some immediate profit. And it's a bit sad, really, in a sense, because it means that youth players from academies are going to be sold off pretty soon after they actually break into the first team and they can get a fee from him, because clubs will want to do that. It's the biggest profit they can possibly make, effectively, in theory at least. And the other ways they do this, though, I mean, again, this is not illegal, but it's mainly because it's so hard to prove, but there are ways where people are actually working out that they can do this through, multi-club ownership as well, where you've got the same owner for different clubs in different countries. And the most notable example of this in terms of the size of it is the City Group, the Manchester City Group. They just recently got Silvino from Troyes, who are also a City Group club. And on top of that as well, he actually was on loan at Girona, who are a City Group club as well, on top of that. So it's interesting how they get around this with stuff like that, because effectively you're negotiating with yourself. It's not you can set whatever transfer fee you want. And again, if you get this triangle going between different clubs and you play it right, you could effectively magic up money from nowhere. It's money that doesn't exist, but in your financial records, it does. So again, say a player gets passed around 50 million, 50 million, 50 million. That's 50 million profit for all those clubs. I mean, we've not seen it to the extent where they've been transferred around 3 times and stuff like that. In theory, that could happen, but we do see it on a smaller on a scale when it's clubs from different owners in the same league. There have been a lot of transfers recently between the likes of Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Chelsea, Aston Villa. Some of the transfer fees are very odd, and if you actually look at the triangle of clubs when it comes to these, I think there was what was it now? It was a Nana or someone like that. He went for 50 million, which was the same price that such and such paid for it, and it worked out as before. This might have been a swap deal, for example, but swap deals don't do anything for you in terms of transfer fees, so they're not good for PSR. But if you just say, we'll pay you 50 million and you pay us 50 million, then again, if it's a 5-year deal on both sides, you made 40 million profit for PSR. So that's some of the ways they get around it. Obviously, amortization, and you've got the multi-club ownerships, and also these dodgy triangle deals that they're doing in terms of transfers. Yeah, so this is what it does, you know. You've got very clever people running football clubs. They'll find a way to get around these rules as best they can, and unless it gets cracked down upon, then it's going to keep happening. But I think it's very hard to crack down on this, because it's like, well, we know what you're doing, but how do we prove it in a legal sense? It's very difficult. But guys, let us know what you think. Can this be allowed to continue? Because we're only going to see it accelerate as clubs want to spend more and more money. And people might be saying, well, we need to change the PSR rules, allow for a bigger loss than £105 million over 3 seasons. But then again, at that point, they're just going to push the boundaries anyway. Leicester lost over £200 million in 3 years. You think about what Chelsea or Man United or someone like that could spend if they wanted to, and have a massive loss, because they make the money back over time because they're such huge clubs. Anyway, another discussion for another day. But let us know what you think about this, guys. Does something need to be done? Can it be allowed to continue? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What needs to happen next when it comes to PSR? And of course, keep it tuned to thefootballchronicle.com for much more football content just like this.